Okay.
So, hi everyone, this is John with the Reluctant Tech Traveler, and I'm here with Josh Peterson, owner and a filmmaker extraordinaire of Shutter Sweep. Josh is basically known for quite a number of short films, such as Thirsty, Life Bright Chair, The Night of My Death, and Sight, right?
The Unbroken Sky.
Yes, Unbroken Sky. That's not on the website, is it?
I think it should be by now. Yeah.
Okay. Josh and I were classmates at TC Williams and at Alexandria High School, and I literally haven't talked to him since graduation. One of the things that,
1987.
yeah, basically, after I went to Chicago and Josh went to Harvard, we've been kind of Facebook buddies, but I kind of got tired of knowing all my friends through Facebook, so I thought I would try to reconnect with them just to actually see what the hell they're doing. One of your films, actually, like Reply Share, kind of touches on this idea of sort of digital connections were sort of not really like so many kids nowadays are so only connecting with each other sort of through digital means and not through face to face, which I think is kind of sad. So I guess Josh, I mean, it's really good to thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I guess for starters, I guess I was just wondering, I know that we went to school together and went to Harvard. What what have you been doing after college? What's been going on?
Well, I after college, I had no idea what I was going to do. I went back and spent a few fraught weeks with my parents because I came back to Alexandria because I didn't really have a plan. I was kind of half-heartedly looking at journalism school, and a couple of think tanks and things like that. Just what do you do with an undergraduate history degree, which is what I have. And really was kind of in a bit of adrift. And then another high school TC classmate of ours, Walter Carlton.
Oh
Remember
yeah.
Walter? Walter dropped by, knocked on the door. This is the days before phones and email and anything like that. So he came by unannounced. Actually didn't know I was there. He was coming to ask my parents if they knew how to get in touch with me. And I answered the door, and he was quite surprised. And we spent an afternoon reminiscing and talking about a film that we had made together in high school.
At TC.
Barney. Yeah, TC. A film that I did a lot of acting in, and that he and Chris Heenan made together called Barney, which was a bizarre comedy, which actually is pretty fun to watch these nowadays. Um, Anyway, we started talking about movies, and I kind of realized it had been an old interest of mine. I was a drama nerd, a theater nerd, and at TC, I had made that movie with Walter. I'd done some animated things, and I kind of had this kind of bolt of lightning, like, oh wait, this is actually what I would. This is something for me to pursue. And he was actually heading. He had gone to William and Mary, and he was just heading back down to Williamsburg the next day, I think, to work on a student film there, and invited me to tag along, and I did. And I went and did basically production assistant, grunt work on a student film for a week down there, and it kind of confirmed what I was into. And after that, I started thinking, okay, well, how do I pursue this? And I kind of looked around and who do I know? Do my parents know? Do my friends know? And I found an independent filmmaker in the San Francisco Bay Area named Rob Nilsson, who had been a classmate and friend of my father's. They hadn't
Okay.
been in touch over in decades. And he was this really interesting looking independent maverick outsider filmmaker who lived in Berkeley and made these kind of John Cassavetes inspired improv movies. And I called him, and shortly after that, I flew out to the Bay Area, and I've been out in California ever since. I kind of worked as an unpaid intern for many years with Rob Nelson, which was a great film education. It sort of taught me that there are no rules and nothing is impossible. And worked on a feature film of his called Chalk, which is about low-life pool hustlers in Richmond, California. A kind of crazy zero, micro budget feature film that we filmed all around the Bay Area for several years, and that was a great film education for me. I got to do a little bit of everything because there were no departments and unions and uh, sort of standard practices. It was kind of a situation where we need someone to do this. Are you willing to learn how to do it? Okay, this is how you do it. And then I was sort of off to the races.
Mm.
And
So,
so after that, I kind of graduated. I sort of, it sort of confirmed that this is what I wanted to be doing. I found a niche over the next several years in post-production, doing editing.
okay.
And there's a lot of interesting independent art cinema being made in the Bay Area. It's not Hollywood. So it's not like the big industry at all. There's also a lot of really excellent documentary work. There's a real high cluster of excellent documentary filmmakers in the Bay Area. And that's how I kind of ended up making my living and ultimately, paying for my mortgage and putting my kids through school was working as a documentary film editor. So I have a long resume of doc films that have been on PBS and in theatrical and stuff like that. But my love has always been working in fiction film. I love working with actors. I love writing. And so about 15 years ago, after a few decades of the documentary editing, I was like, okay, I've got to start making my own stuff. And that's when I started making short films. You listed some of them. I created Sweepshutter Films, my company. Um, Made a bunch of shorts. Like Reply Share is my one feature-length film that you mentioned, the one about it has themes about virtual versus real interactions. I've made a number of music videos, and right now I'm developing a couple of different projects. And yeah, it's a crazy sort of insane business that doesn't make any sense at all. It's kind of a starving artist life that my wife is very grateful my wife puts up with. But I am able to kind of make ends meet, basically doing the editing projects on other films.
So are you still doing documentaries or are you doing your stuff totally
I'm
on
doing
yourself?
it's a bit of a mix right now. I'm doing fewer documentary projects than I used to because I'm trying to devote more time to my own stuff.
Mhm.
The most recent documentary that I edited is a really great Brazilian film called Skin of Glass, which is I worked on with a wonderful Brazilian American director named Denise Meckel, and people can find that. It's kind of out in the world. It was on public television recently, so I think it actually may still be viewable on the PBS website. And that's a good example of the editing work I do for other people. And I got to do some of the writing on it as well. And
Oh,
actually, the main project I'm working on developing right now is a documentary feature-length film. It would be the first one feature-length documentary I would ever have made. But that's so I'm kind of it's all cinema in my mind. Whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I have done a lot of documentary editing, as I said. Most of my stuff so far has been fiction, but it's all kind of part of the mix and different aspects of the same language, I think.
yeah. So, Josh, I have to ask you though. I mean, you said you had no idea when you got out of Harvard. I mean, I remember at school, like we did discuss this briefly. I mean, when you were a kid, like in middle school or at GW, what did you have ideas of wanting to do at that point? I mean, did you have a clue you wanted to go into the arts fields? Or
Well,
like,
I wasn't at GW because I came to TC. I was returning to the American school system from overseas.
oh, that's right, you were in Lebanon, right?
That's
Or
right. I was in Beirut for 4 years, and then when we came back, I was in a French school in Bethesda for 3 years at the Lycée Rochambeau up there. So I was for 7 years. I was in the French school system. I came back into the American system in 10th grade at TC. That was my sort of crash introduction back into that whole cultural experience. And yeah, I was really into the arts. I don't know if you remember. I was in the school plays, and we did those. Bob Hurd and I did those astronomy announcements. These crazy audio comedy
yes, it
bits.
became the astronomy announcement club. Like it was not so much the astronomy club,
You
but
were in the astronomy club,
well,
right?
because we didn't do anything, but I mean the announcements were kind of cool, especially the Batman one where you did the Batman theme and then you were like, okay, Robin, why don't you, or Robin said to Batman, why don't you tell people really why you run around in a cape and tights? And so
Exactly. We were always, in a very mature adolescent way, we were always pushing the envelope on what we could get away with. And we actually did get banned by the principal, I think, once we pushed it. We pushed it just far enough over the line, but if you listen to them back, I still have those recordings. It's a lot of juvenile innuendo and stuff, but we had a lot of fun doing that.
No, that the Astronomy Announcement Club actually was probably a better name than the Astronomy Club. It was,
That's funny.
but I mean, but at that point, you still didn't have an idea like what
No, I
you
was
want.
thinking, I really thought I would be an actor. And I also looked at art school. And it's a weird detour that I took in college. I had this feeling, I went to college and it's a little hard for me to reconstruct. I've talked about this with friends and family. My parents weren't pressuring me to do anything.
But you were a history major in college.
I kind of did this weird thing in college where I was like, okay, now it's time for me to put aside these childish things. I'm not going to do, all this art, theater, film stuff anymore. I'm going to be a very serious academic. To this day, I'm a little confused as to why I did that. I felt I had some weird sense of responsibility, some kind of judgment about it. So it's in a way, it's a kind of a strange detour I took. Those 4 years, I didn't do any I sang in a choir. And I took a life drawing class, and those are the two like arts related things that I did as extracurriculars. And it's like you can stretch the rubber band; it's going to come back to its shape. I think after graduation, and when Walter came by, that was the trigger. It's sort of like, oh wait, yeah, no, this is the path that I really always wanted to be on. It kind of woke me up, and so then just the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, so you were thinking more like at Harvard, you were thinking of being a teacher or like being an academic then.
I don't know. I was a real grind. I was just like trying to get good grades, and which was a struggle there. And I didn't have. It's interesting because my kids just graduated university in the last couple of years, and I see I recognize in them some of that same confusion. It's sort of like you're kind of on this hamster wheel and you're just looking at the horizon and you can't really see very far beyond that. You're just trying to keep up. I think that's kind of the mode I was in. I wasn't thinking long term. I was so young, we were so naive, and I don't know what your story was like, but um, a lot of people I knew didn't have, unless you were like in a medical school track or like engineering or something like that. Some of those folks I think had a real plan.
Yeah.
A lot of people I knew were just sort of getting by and not really thinking much beyond, a year in the future.
I think, I mean, I sort of went through sort of similar with what you did. I mean, I went to college in Chicago and then afterwards I took a job in the Bay Area and that sent me to Japan. And then that was in 2000, then the dot-com crashed and then I got axed in Japan. But I had a huge severance. So I basically hung around and then did traveling in Asia. And that's sort of how it really opened my eyes sort of to traveling. I think one of the other reasons my ulterior motives for sort of talking to people like you that sort of follow their dreams is that I think kids nowadays seem to be really, really much more cautious than we are. And like just talking to a lot of I'm not going to name names because they'll probably yell at me, but I'm just saying some of our generation in Alexandria, their kids are all like going to schools in the local area. They're going to William and Mary, basically all schools in Virginia. I don't see that many kids going to like somewhere in the middle of nowhere or going to overseas. They're all kind of playing it safe right now, and I think that's kind of a shame.
I think it's true. I mean, I see that in my kids' generation as well, that there is kind of I mean, there's a lot. I mean, to be fair, it's like, I think with all this stuff going on, the world is pretty intense. I mean, we had the end of the Cold War and fear of nuclear annihilation, right? But I feel like there's so many things coming at kids from so many directions right now. I think the COVID pandemic was a huge they just knocked a lot of kids' heads sideways. And I think technology has really affected things as well. I mean, I do think there's this sense of everyone feels, I do hear from younger people this sense of being surveilled. I mean, they grew up kind of with their kids monitoring where they were at every moment.
Mhm.
There's a lot of anxiety from that parent generation, kind of, helicopter parenting and stuff, which has this kind of meta lesson for kids that the world is a scary place and you must always be on your toes. So I think, it's not that surprising that there might be people might really be feeling like, oh, I've got to stay on the straight and narrow path because it's a dangerous world out there. I think that's a big cultural shift, generational shift that's it's real.
I mean, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean, like, so just point blank, do you think your kids are going to have it as well as we did, or do you think they're going to have a tougher life?
I think it's a good question. I think it is more challenging now. I think the economic statistics really bear that out, right? A
Yeah,
lot of
especially
things
with the
are
current
more
economy. Yeah.
competitive. Yeah, it's not easy, and I do think there are these new anxieties. And look, as humanity is going through this massive social psychosocial experiment right now with how we're changing what it means to be human in terms of being plugged into the internet, during every waking hour and carrying it around in your pocket, and pretty soon having it as an implant, and or a wearable at the very least, right? It's like
Like the
this.
Matrix, right? Where you have a little port in the back of your
Yeah,
skull.
exactly. Well, I mean, look, Neuralink is real. They're working on it. It's like that's one of Elon's pet projects. It's not viable for a long time, but there's certainly a segment of the population that wants to go in that direction. And the rest
I'm
have
not
to.
sure. I yes, I agree, but I'm not sure I would want that at this point. But I mean, I know a big segment would probably want to be cyber.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would say hell no, never, but there's definitely people who want to. I think there's also a huge thing with sort of the new versions of Google Glass and the Facebook or Meta glasses that are coming out, which have huge ramifications for privacy and everything. If people can be talking to you and you don't realize that they're filming, they're recording you because the glass is, without your permission, but
Yeah.
also that it's augmented, that they could be like seeing a download of like your your internet presence and your background. You could look at a stranger in the street and know their name and their address and stuff like that. I don't know how that, regulatory things might catch up with that, but right now those things are really happening, and that changes the human experience on such a radical level. I don't, I think the technology stuff, obviously, already we've gone through a revolution in our generation that is probably equivalent to like Gutenberg inventing the printing press,
I
right? In
mean, the
terms
internet revolution that we went through. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's sort of like that's up there with mass publication and printing and all those things. But there's even another step, I think, now with this idea of like I said, either implants or wearables or something like that, where there's some information level transfer that's happening almost invisibly all around us and at every moment. Uh,
Yeah, I gotta tell you, John, I'm not sure it's a good thing. It is
Me
happening,
neither.
but I'm not sure it's a good
I'm
thing.
very down on it. Yeah.
So, all right. I mean, I guess, and then I ask this usually when I do these interviews. I mean, if you could do it over again, like if you could talk to 20-year-old Josh, would you still go to Harvard? I'm assuming you'll still go to Harvard. Would you still study history, or would you do the same? Would you
Well, it's go along with that sense of a detour. I mean, this is my personality. I have regrets. I'm always analyzing and looking through the rearview mirror.
really? You?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
But I think I do wish that I had um, some people. I was talking to another Harvard a classmate of mine, and he was saying, the cliche is the hardest thing about Harvard is getting in, just because it's just ridiculously selective. It's a big brand, so it gets way more applications than any other school in the world, and there's only a limited number of places. And it is kind of a lottery to get in. I mean, everyone's applying is, almost everyone applying is good and can succeed there. So how the basis on which they choose who gets in is, a little bit arbitrary, I think. Um, and once you get in, it's kind of like no one cares if you got straight A's at Harvard. If you have, again, it's the brand, right? It's like that diploma is it's a big deal when you have that name. And to some degree, a lot of schools, or whether it's Yale, Princeton, Chicago, people, oh, you went there. It's like, okay, they're not going to look at your transcript. So I don't know why I was so focused on academics there. But I talked to a guy who said, I got in, that was it. I was just going to get gentleman's C's all the way through and just do a lot of extracurriculars. And that's what he did. He did a lot of theater, actually. He's a writer now. And so I kind of, yeah, I wish I'd sort of done more arts stuff. I wish I'd taken more time to kind of live my life and be less of a monk when I was there. Um, what else would I have done differently? I mean, it's a
Well,
crazy game. You can go crazy thinking about that stuff.
but I mean, you were never, I mean, you were not in the jock crowd. You weren't in the total geek crowd either. I mean, you were kind of in the middle. I mean, I assume you had a social life at
Oh
Harvard,
yeah,
but
I had a social life, but I could have more. I could have done more. I think what I would have liked to do is more creative work. I would have been interesting to experiment more. But on the other hand, it's 4 years. I mean, it's like you talk to young people, I think, and they can't imagine time running out, right? Because their life seems to be infinite in front of them. On the other hand, four
yeah.
years, it's not that. 4 years is not. It's a blimp. A blip. It's like it goes so fast. I don't feel like it was a huge damage to myself. I'm very happy with. I'm happy that I was able to, like I said, support my family working in this field. I think I would have liked to have done more of my own work earlier, but I also know just realistically how hard it is. It's another lottery. If people who get to make really good money doing this kind of work are very, very few and far between. And
Would you still have come out to the Bay Area or would you have possibly gone to LA? I mean, I don't know. A
was
lot of my,
interested in LA. Yeah, Hollywood always, I was never interested in the Hollywood scene. I don't regret that. I think that's just not a good fit for me.
really,
The
okay.
kind of films, I'm an art film guy, it's sort of like I'm making much more personal stuff. The Bay Area has been really good in terms of just really interesting, stimulating people doing labors of love a lot of the time, but really, really excellent work. And I think LA, very hard it's much more brutal there, and it's a much more socially, I think everyone is kind of looking over their shoulder all the time in terms of in the industry at least, and it's an industry town,
Right.
like the DC area. People actually, the joke I always heard was that LA really is a lot like DC, just with better looking, better dressed people. But there's the same kind of real obsession with hierarchy. Where do I fit in? People kind of climbing and kind of backstabbing, and there's a kind of desperation. And that, aside from just the aesthetics of the kind of films that I was interested in making, um, that world, the glimpses I've had of it, I've just been like, I don't think I could swing that. It's just a little bit too much.
I could see that being an issue. Yeah, you would, it's kind of the clicks that we had at TC again, where like, yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
popular, yeah.
You were in the Bay Area for how long?
I was in the Bay Area for 3 years.
Okay.
I worked for this company called Kana out in Menlo Park. And then, yeah, but then, I had huge stock options. And then they sent me out to Tokyo because they were opening a Tokyo office. And literally, when I got off the plane, that's when the dot-com crash.
Oh,
So they
wow.
sent me out and then I got fired or I got laid off. So,
Amazing.
but
Did
I
you
mean,
you stayed in Tokyo though?
I stayed in Tokyo. It was a great experience. I mean, I kind of started from zero, kind of like when you went out to the Bay Area and I kind of built up a friends network and I kind of worked there for a while. But yeah, it was a good experience. But I mean, getting back to what we were talking about, I can't imagine kids like in the current generation doing what you did, just kind of going out to San Francisco with nothing and saying, I'm just
I
going to
don't
start.
know. I know some are. I mean, look, I know.
But I mean, kids now, I hate to sound cynical like an old fart, but I mean, they're so into having everything set up for them. It's kind of like they need everything.
Yes, but there are exceptions to that, I guess. I mean, part of it, I think my daughter is very much an exception to that, for example. She
Well, that's
loves
cool.
to travel and she's very comfortable just sort of launching into an adventure and sort of trying something out.
But if
And
things go off the rails, can she problem solve?
I think, yes, definitely.
Okay.
But she may be a bit of an exception. I don't know. I also always, I'm reminded too, it's like we have a narrow vision. It's like we're thinking about American kids of a certain, socioeconomic
Right.
class. And even in the United States, there's kids who are coming up in sort of more working class backgrounds, I think, that have never gotten onto this sort of more neurotic path, because they just couldn't afford to. They're survivors. I definitely see internationally variance. I don't know what the percentages is. I agree with you that there's a huge problem Um, and I don't know what the person, but I just don't know what is that most kids? Is it all, half of them? Is it two-thirds of them? I don't know what that percentage is, but I do see there are adventurers in the next generation who are doing cool things.
That,
Um,
I mean, I'm happy to hear that. It's just for myself, like when people come to visit me now, especially like for kids of our generation, they'll come to visit me. I'm living in Hawaii right now, and then they'll come and then they'll be like, I want to go here. I'm like, okay. And then they'll yell at me. They're like, okay, did you call them to see what their opening hours are? And I'm like, no. Did you make a reservation? I'm like, no. It's like, Uncle John, what? And I'm like, oh my God, can we just go there? But like everything has to be like planned out to the point of ad nauseum, and that just drives me nuts that kids just can't.
Oh, yeah, that does sound annoying. But I definitely know kids who are the opposite of that, who I can't, you can't get them to make a plan. They just want to kind of play it by ear. There's an interesting thing about their technology. One thing is, in some ways, it enables a kind of improvisatory way of interacting with the world. Like, remember when we were in at TC, if you were going to like say, oh, we're going to go to the mall, next
Right.
week, we had to make that plan on the phone or face to face, and then you had to show up at that time. There was no like last minute, hey, I'm 10 minutes away. Can we actually, meet across the street at the other thing? Or, there was no ability to kind of be flexible with things that phones actually, have empowered now.
Yes, I think to a degree, but then I think the whole internet reservations and online stuff, I think that sort of gets kids kind of more anal retentive about like sort of planning everything out.
And
So
I
there,
definitely see a lot of kids don't have the understanding that they feel like if it's not on the internet, it doesn't exist. And there's a lot of stuff that's not connected to the internet. A
yeah.
lot of very interesting places and institutions and people that are not easy to, that aren't accessible in that way. So, and people don't know how to use maps or like look something up in a card catalog in a library or something like that. Like the physical research is really atrophying because people are it's so easy to do it on
Yes.
the computer, right?
I don't know what our American Civ teachers would say now that we can't use the library. Miss Hand would probably be yelling.
Yeah.
So
So do
Josh,
you travel a lot?
I travel a lot now between Hawaii and Japan. So during COVID, I went back to Ohio to take care of my mom. My mom passed away in 2022,
Oh,
and then afterwards, I just kind of said, okay, I'm going to move out to Hawaii. So
yeah.
it was Hawaii, and so I'm living out here now. And then I travel back and forth between the mainland and Japan, which is most of my customers are.
I have a recommendation for the next person for you to talk to is Walter Carlton.
Okay.
Because Walter lives in Maryland. His wife is Czech, and he travels he's a real globetrotter.
He's
Um,
a filmmaker also, like you, or what's?
oh, he's a graphic designer.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
but they don't have kids, and his idea is like, well, I'm spending my money doing what I love to do, which is he does really interesting travel all over the world. If you find him on Facebook, he's always posting like he does like at least like two or three major voyages per year.
Oh, okay. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
So, Josh, I guess just a couple of questions. I mean, so what are your plans long term? I mean, we're still quote unquote young. We're only in our 50s.
Well,
Like,
I tell you, watching your kids, like my daughter graduated from UC Santa Barbara last weekend, and watching, now she's done. They're both done because my son graduated a couple of years ago, and
so
it
you're
really
free.
makes you think about like, oh, okay. You feel like you're moving up the line towards that certain destination. It's like now I'm where my parents were. I remember where they were in their lives when I graduated college.
Are your parents, they're still in the DC area?
They're not. They're actually up in New England now.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
but they're doing great. And yeah, I don't know. It's sort of I'm very conscious of
You
just
want to
like
stay in the Bay Area?
not necessarily. I like the Bay Area, but I like to travel a lot too, like my daughter. And like my wife is the same, thankfully.
Okay.
I right now this documentary I'm trying to develop is about it's a portrait documentary about a person that we knew in Beirut, a Palestinian Lebanese academic and musician who ran
Wow.
a choir that my dad sang in Beirut. This was in the early years of the Civil War there. This was the late 1970s. Very colorful, fascinating guy, and a totally out gay guy in, the Middle East, which was a big deal. Charming, mischievous, ridiculously well educated. He had like a degree from the Royal College of Music and a PhD from Harvard, and he was a fellow at Princeton, and he did linguistics, he did musicology, he taught English, and he was very tragically he was murdered in 1982.
Oh, I'm sorry. Shit.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to be embarking on this. I'm just in the very early stages of research and development on this.
Your
And
father knew him, but did you know him personally?
I did, yeah, I remember him because my dad took voice lessons with him, and I would go to his apartment and sit there while my dad was doing his voice lesson. I was in some of they, this was interesting. This guy, just through sheer force of personality, he created this choir called the Beirut Orpheus Choir in
Wow.
the 1950s. They did, holiday concerts, but they always put on these light operas. They put on Gilbert and Sullivan operettas every year. And even during the Civil War, when we were there, when the fighting was going on, they kept going, and there was a sort of defiant kind of sense of, culture will not die, the arts must continue in the face of the bombs and everything else. And so anyway, I always admired him. I thought he was kind of interesting, colorful character. And when I started to look into it, I realized there's nothing about him. There's no Wikipedia page. There's very little presence in any, some mentions and footnotes of some books. And I thought, oh my God, someone's got to do this. Someone's got to tell this story. And so this is a long-winded way of saying that I'm very excited because it's brought me back in touch with my Beirut experience. Because when we left in 81, that was it. I never went back until this January. I went back after, what was it, 44 years for the first time, and fell in love with the place all over again. It's a very deeply messed up place, but it's still a very beautiful place, amazing people, an incredible melting pot culture. Um, and it's a disaster on so many levels, but it's still really compelling and magical. So my future, I feel like, is kind of reconnecting a little bit more with my international nomadic roots, which was really how I grew up. My early years were in New York City and Brooklyn. When I was 8, we moved to Lebanon. We had short stints in Italy and in Syria. Um, and I was in French schools for so long. I feel in some ways that was very formative, and I feel very at home when I'm not at home now. Like when I go overseas, it feels very comfortable to me to be in a place where I don't really know the language or not at all, and I'm an outsider. That's my safe space.
It's interesting you should say that because one of the last things I wanted to mention was especially the movie Thirst, which I actually really Thirsty, which I really enjoyed. You have almost an Anthony Bourdain kind of style when you film this. I could actually see like Anthony Bourdain walking into one of your movies because you have that kind of punk style.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, but then I think it might also be because you've kind of, like you mentioned, you have this international, you're not afraid to sort of be uncomfortable, which is, I think, for me, I think it's a really, really good trial quality. I think kids now, they feel like they have to be in control and you can't always be in control. That's just not the way the world works.
Yeah,
So.
that's really life. I think so. Yeah, so well, thanks. Yeah, I think well, Thirsty is interesting. One thing that's a little detail about that is the old man in that is Rob Nilsson. He's the filmmaker who I learned film from. He's the crazy maverick outsider independent filmmaker who I was basically working on. His film Chalk was my film school. And
Yeah,
well, it was fun because he's in his 80s now and he's still making movies. But I finally got after acting for him and in some of his films and everything, I finally got to direct him, and it was really, really fun to do that.
I mean, I hope I don't offend Anthony Bourdain fans, but I mean, when I saw Thirsty, I could almost see it was tragic Bourdain's suicide, but I could almost see like this would be like him waking up in that environment and like saying, "What the fuck?" And so I actually thought, I could see Bourdain waking up, kind of like the Wired movie with John Belushi, and so
Sure.
So yeah, I actually really thought it was very, very parts unknown-ish the way you felt.
Speaking of Bourdain, his episodes about Beirut are really excellent. And anyone who's curious about Lebanon and what Beirut is really like and that culture is really like, I think those two episodes that he did there are really excellent kind of crash courses in the culture and the reality of it beyond the headlines and the stereotypes.
Hmm. I agree. I mean, the first one was award-winning when he got caught in the Israeli-Lebanon war, and then the second one
Yeah,
he went back. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So okay. Well, Josh, it was really good to talk to you. I guess if you ever make it out to Japan or Hawaii, let me know. I do come to the Bay Area once in a while, so if I
Well,
do,
let's meet up next time you come to the Bay Area. And absolutely, my wife was always trying to drag me to Hawaii and Japan. She actually lived in Japan in her early 20s for a while, and so has a strong feeling about that place. So I would let's stay in touch. And yeah, it's probably more likely that we'll meet in the Bay Area if you make it out here regularly first. But I'd love to sit down face to face.
yeah, I would be nice. I don't know. I mean, the blogs I write are usually based in Japan because I just have the weirdest. I mean, I feel like I'm Jerry Seinfeld in Japan because I have all these really screwed up experiences in Japan. But yeah, people ask once in a while, like, why don't you post? I'm like, well, I'll post when something screwed up happens to me when I go back to Tokyo. But that's usually where the really stupid stuff happens.
That's great.
So, okay. Well, Josh, thank you for your time, sir. It was really good talking to you, and let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
All right. Bye.